Welcome to the Vegan Pulse. I am your host, Nancy Arenas. Today, my guest is Gabriel Gaarden, whose passion is nutrition, and the reason why he is a registered dietitian. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hi, Gabriel. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me, Nancy. Great to see you.
Same, likewise. And I'm going to start with the first question, which is where you get your protein.
Awesome. Thank you. Great question. Sorry, my headphones just disconnected again. I don't know how it magically seems to come back. Just a quick spot for one of my favorite t-shirts here. I've got this t-shirt that says evidence-based nutrition is awesome. And it's from nutritionfacts.org. One of my favorite websites that anybody can go to. Everything on the website's free. It's full of all evidence-based nutrition videos as well as short articles. You can type right in their search bar at the top, where to get my protein. And there's wonderful information about pretty much any health concern that you can think of under the sun. You just type it in their search bar and go there, whether you're suffering from something that has to do with your thyroid, or you've got diabetes, or you've got heart disease. Go to nutritionfacts.org, check it out. Incredible information. And again, it's all evidence-based. It's free of any corporate sponsorship. Wonderful stuff. So protein, great question. We get it all the time. First off, all the largest, strongest mammals on the planet are all plant-based. And so if you look at a gorilla or a giraffe or a hippo or a rhino or an elephant, right, they're all massive animals with huge, strong bones to support hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of, muscle and animal tissue. And that's all done eating plants, right? And we have guts, again, that are optimized to eat plants. That's why we have such a long digestive tract. It's because it takes a long time to break down foods that are high in fiber. Of course, we only get fiber in the form of whole plant foods. We don't get fiber from super ultra processed vegan foods like cookies and crackers and all these different things that are made from processed flours and all these, just random ingredients that you won't find naturally in nature. And then, of course, we don't get any fiber from animal-based foods, whether it's, meat, dairy, fowl, fish, eggs, all those different things don't have any fiber in them. And so our guts are optimized to break down and digest these fibrous foods. And we know that animals can get big and huge and strong eating plants. And if you look at actual studies that have been done, meat eaters and vegans both, and vegetarians as well, literally get about twice as much protein based on the recommended dietary allowances, the RDAs for Americans. And so I think, omnivores tend to get almost twice. Vegans are right at like 1.7 times. So almost twice what's considered the recommended, dietary allowance. And so everybody's getting more protein than we absolutely need, right? And there's nothing wrong with getting a little bit above the recommended dietary allowance. But the point is we're above it. And so pretty much everybody's getting more protein. And that's 97% of Americans are at that 1.7 to basically 2 times what we need. And of course, the RDAs were set up with a cushion. And so they're already built in that pretty much if you're meeting the RDAs, you're probably going to be getting more than you absolutely need to, live and thrive and be healthy, right? So everybody's getting way more protein than we need. And of course, there's certain foods that you can eat to maximize your protein content. I always want to super emphasize legumes, and legumes are any kind of bean, lentil, split pea, or chickpea. And then nuts and seeds, of course, are other great sources of protein, especially seeds. Nuts tend to be a little bit higher in fat on average in terms of their overall proportion of calories. And so you add a little more fat, well, then there's a little less protein there. But seeds tend to be even higher in protein and also rich in fat as well. But their overall calorie content is a slightly higher percentage coming from protein. And the super seeds, when it comes to protein, are going to be number one, hemp seeds. Hemp seeds are wonderful. I incorporate them every day. You can put them into a smoothie. You can sprinkle them on top of your hot cereal like oatmeal. You can sprinkle them on salads. I find they have a very neutral flavor, so they go good in a lot of different things, but especially smoothies and breakfast cereals. They're wonderful for those. And the Mediterranean pine nut. Pine nuts also, just like hemp seeds, they get about 30% of their overall calorie content from protein. So they're very rich in protein. Just a few tablespoons, you're getting like 10 grams of protein. So you do that once a day in addition to all the other foods that you're eating, and you'll definitely get more than enough protein than you need.
Awesome.
And then, of course, vegetables as well. Now, vegetables are very low in calories, but some vegetables tend to be very rich in protein. And so, and especially the dark leafy greens, as well as the cruciferous veg, like broccoli, cauliflower, things like that. So emphasizing the dark leafy greens, the cruciferous veg, and then also fungi, right? That's not a plant, it's a different group, but we kind of lump it in with vegetables. But fungus, eating different kinds of mushrooms as well. Mushrooms are, again, very low in calories. So you're not getting a ton of protein for every mushroom you eat. But again, everything adds up throughout the day, right? And I want to emphasize also that even fruit, which is really low in protein on average, every whole plant food has protein in it, right? So unless I'm eating oil, which comes from a plant, but it's highly processed, or I'm eating sugar, which comes from a sugar beet or sugar cane, which are whole plants, but then we process them in such a way that we remove basically all the healthy elements, the fiber and the phytochemicals and all the other vitamins and minerals. And all we get is just this highly processed sweetener that basically has no other nutrients other than just simple carbohydrate, simple sugar. Unless I'm just eating oil or sugar, two very highly processed foods, oil being 100% fat, sugar being 100% carbohydrate. So those foods obviously don't have any protein in them. But if I'm eating any other whole plant food, a whole fruit, vegetable, bean, whole grain, nut, seed, things like that, I'm going to be getting protein from all those foods. So even if my banana only has 1 or 2 grams of protein, I can add that to all the other things that I'm eating throughout the day, and they just start to build on each other. And before you know it, you're getting plenty of protein, more protein than you need, and certainly plenty of protein to build healthy, strong muscle, right? So protein's not an issue.
And I was a little bit distressed because I had this one woman who came to me and she goes, I can't be vegan because I am diabetic and my doctor said I have to eat meat. What do you say to that?
Wonderful question. People always come up with the greatest questions because they're, living them in real life, and life demonstrates all these lessons. Number one, sadly, most doctors almost know nothing about nutrition. So that's great news for everyone because, of course, we herald our doctors as the kind of, the utmost high when it comes to health and health information. There are arbiters of health. But sadly, again, nutrition is the most important component of our health. Now, sleep and good mental health, right? Having, meditation and stress relief and being surrounded by loving, friendly people, having social support. There's a multitude of things that are important factors when it comes to our overall health. But nutrition is paramount. It's number one. It's going to trump all those other things. If you do all those other things well, but you eat a miserably poor diet, you're still going to suffer, it's still going to have a very severe negative impact on your health. And so we always want to emphasize good nutrition. And sadly, most people aren't, there's a few doctors, because they don't get hardly any nutrition training in medical school, that after medical school have gone on to do rigorous research and really inform themselves, a lot of continuing education, so that they can be better sources of nutrition information for their patients. And then other smart doctors, if they exist within, within health plans or health systems where they're able to actually refer patients, and they also happen to be humble enough to actually do so. This hasn't happened historically very well, that doctors will actually refer their patients to a qualified registered dietitian like myself. Then they can refer them to somebody who does know about nutrition. Because again, most doctors do not, even though they might claim to. Much of what they'll purport is just what we might call, like in the workout community, bro science. It's just hearsay. It's just something that they heard, in the tabloids or on TV, or they read in who knows what source of information. But it's generally not coming from rigorous scientific study that's based in the peer-reviewed scientific literature. And so again, no, one of the worst things you can do if you have diabetes is to eat more meat. You could probably get away with eating a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean only on a very rare occasion, and still be healthy with diabetes. But eating meat is a key primary risk factor for becoming a type 2 diabetic. And of course, there's also differentiations between being a type 1 diabetic versus being a type 2, right? Being a type 1 diabetic is an autoimmune disease where your pancreas loses the ability to produce the insulin that is used to get sugar out of our bloodstream in our body. And so in type 1 diabetics, you don't have any control over whether the fact you have to then take, exogenous insulin, you have to inject it, or you have to take an oral insulin medication basically to survive. But in both cases, it's going to be better if you eat less meat because, again, one of the primary risk factors for the precursors that will actually lead to, in this case, type 2 diabetes, the one that lifestyle certainly has a big impact on whether or not you get it, right? Your lifestyle impacts whether or not you get type 2 diabetes. And again, principally, that's going to be the food that you eat. Exercise also plays a part, but nutrition is the most important thing when it comes to type 2 diabetes. And so eating a diet that's rich in saturated fat, of course, saturated fat is predominantly found in animal-based foods, is both toxic to our muscle cells, and our muscle cells are what use most of our blood sugar when it comes to type 2 diabetes in our body, as well as our brain. Our brain and muscles, suck up all that sugar, and they use it for energy so that we can continue to move and do the work that our bodies need to do on a daily basis. And so saturated fat, like I say, you find it in a few, plant-based sources, most specifically palm oil and coconut oil. But predominantly, if you look at the foods that people eat and where they get the most saturated fat, most people are getting most of their saturated fat from animal-based foods. And saturated fat also happens to be incredibly toxic to the insulin-producing cells of our pancreas. And so you can give somebody a diet rich in saturated fat, and then you can actually either take biopsies or, do blood tests and things on people. And you can see that that causes a lot of inflammation to the pancreas, and most specifically the beta cells, which are the insulin producing cells in the pancreas. And so again, this all argues for, if you have diabetes, you want to eat less meat, not incorporate more meat or incorporate meat at all really into your diet. Instead, what you want to do is you want to eat a diet that's high in fiber, that's low in saturated fat, really low in total fat, and that's rich in all these wonderful phytochemicals that help to reduce inflammation, that help to control our blood sugar levels. Again, fiber is paramount for this. Earlier, I mentioned that 97% of Americans, so almost everybody in America, is getting way more than enough protein. Well, that's flipped when it comes to fiber. 97% plus of Americans, so that's almost everybody in our country, is only getting half of the minimum recommended dietary allowance for fiber per day. So if you average men and women, men's needs are a little higher than women's. Men need about 38 grams of fiber per day. Again, this is a minimum recommendation. I would recommend people get a lot more than that. And women need 25 as a minimum. So if you average that out, that's 31% for all Americans. The average in America is only 15 grams of fiber. So we're getting less than half the minimum recommended amount of fiber. And no wonder we see this slew of diseases that have to do with poor digestion, whether it's GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease, whether it's gastritis, which is inflammation and pain of the stomach, whether it's, that I just forgot their name, ulcers, you get ulcers in the stomach. Again, this is all from our dietary choices that we principally get these things, not from stress. Those stress can exacerbate things. And then if you look at the lower end of the intestinal tract, it's what creates constipation. It's what creates then people having diarrhea. All these different digestive issues stem principally, of course, from our poor diet and especially our poor consumption of dietary fiber. So we've got to eat more whole plant foods. And again, if you want to improve your diabetes, you should be eating a wide variety of whole plant foods, getting a lot of fiber. And no, meat is not going to help improve your diabetes.
Gabriel, thank you so much for all your knowledge and for sharing it with my audience. I surely appreciate it.
Making
Making Sense with Gabriel. Take care. Thank you.